Commodities are not just assets. They are the pricing mechanism of the real economy. When commodities move, the economy feels it. In inflation, in growth, in policy decisions, and in financial stability. This video is not market commentary. It is an educational foundation, a first principles view of how commodities connect to macro. A commodity is a standardized, globally traded input. It is not defined by branding. It is defined by interchangeability. Oil is oil. Wheat is wheat. Copper is copper. Commodities sit at the beginning of the production chain. That makes them upstream prices, before wages, before services, before consumer prices. Key idea. Commodities are inputs, and inputs define constraints. In macroeconomics, constraints matter more than narratives. Commodities create constraints because they impact the cost of production. They shape inflation. They change trade balances. And they influence policy. When commodities rise sharply, they compress margins. They reduce real disposable income. They force trade-offs across the system. So commodities are not one more chart. They are the economic environment. To understand commodities, you need three variables. First, price, the headline. Second, flows, production and consumption. Third, inventories, the buffer. Most of the time, prices move because the system is tight, or because it is loose. A tight system has low inventories, little spare capacity, and high sensitivity to shocks. A loose system has high inventories, excess capacity, and lower sensitivity. Key idea. Inventories define fragility. Not all commodities matter the same way. We can group them into three buckets: energy, industrial metals, and agriculture. Energy is the most macro-sensitive because energy is everywhere. It affects transportation, manufacturing, heating, and the cost base of almost everything. Industrial metals are the cycle signal. They reflect construction, infrastructure, and manufacturing demand. Agriculture is the social constraint because food inflation becomes political inflation quickly. So each group connects to macro differently. Energy is the inflation impulse. Metals are the growth impulse. Agriculture is the stability impulse. Now we move to the inflation channel. Commodity inflation starts upstream. Then it moves downstream. This process is not instant. It transmits with lags. Businesses absorb part of the shock in margins, or pass it through prices, or reduce output, or change product mix. Energy is special because it also affects inflation expectations. If households see energy prices rising consistently, inflation becomes part of behavior. Wage negotiations change, pricing strategies change, and central banks become more defensive. Key idea. Energy is not only a price, it is an expectation anchor. Next is the growth channel. Commodities can act like a tax. If input costs rise, someone pays. Either companies lose margins or consumers lose purchasing power. Both outcomes slow the economy. High energy prices reduce discretionary spending. They shift consumption away from non-essentials. And in emerging markets, commodity spikes can be even more damaging because import bills rise quickly. So the growth impact depends on a key distinction. Are you a producer or a consumer? Commodity exporters benefit from higher terms of trade. Importers face tighter conditions. Key idea. The same shock is positive for some economies and negative for others. Now we connect commodities to money. Most commodities are priced in dollars. That creates an important relationship. Dollar up can tighten commodity conditions. Dollar down can loosen them. For buyers outside the United States, a stronger dollar makes commodities more expensive. Demand can weaken even if the global economy is unchanged. Commodity markets are also financialized. They respond to interest rates, liquidity, and funding costs. When real rates rise, the system becomes less tolerant of risk. Funding becomes more expensive, and speculative demand can shrink. Key idea. Commodities are not purely physical markets anymore. They are physical and financial. Commodities often follow a classic cycle. Step 1. Expansion. Demand rises steadily. Step 2. Capacity constraints appear. Inventories fall. Prices move up. Step 3. Supply responds, but with a lag, because production cannot expand instantly. Step 4. Prices overshoot, demand slows, and inventories rebuild. Step 5. Down cycle. Prices fall, investment slows. Then the cycle repeats. Key idea. Commodity cycles are shaped by lagged supply response. That lag creates overshoots. Commodity shocks typically come from 4 sources. 1. Demand shocks, usually growth-related. 2. Supply shocks, weather, geopolitics, production disruptions. 3. Policy shocks, sanctions, tariffs, export restrictions. 4. Monetary shocks, dollar moves, real rates, liquidity. These shocks matter because they change the macro regime. A small shock in a loose market is noise. The same shock in a tight market is crisis. Key idea. Context matters more than the headline. Commodities become systemic when 3 conditions are present. 1. The commodity is critical, energy especially. 2. Inventories are low. There is no buffer. 3. The financial system is leveraged. In those conditions, a commodity move is not just inflation. It becomes a liquidity event. It affects credit spreads, volatility, funding markets, and policy decisions. Key idea. Systemic risk is when price volatility meets leverage. There are a few common mistakes when interpreting commodities. Mistake 1. Commodities up means growth is strong. Sometimes commodities rise because supply is constrained, not because demand is strong. Mistake 2. Commodities down means deflation is here. Commodities are volatile. Down moves can be temporary. A regime shift requires confirmation across the system. Mistake 3. CPI equals commodities. In many economies, services dominate inflation. Commodities can move without CPI following 1-to-1. Key idea. Commodities are a signal, not a complete model. Now the conclusion. Commodities are the economy's input layer. They matter because they shape constraints. Inflation constraints, growth constraints, external balance constraints, and policy constraints. They operate through prices, flows, and inventories, and their cycles are driven by demand, supply lags, policy, and money. The goal is not prediction. The goal is understanding, because in macro, understanding the system is the edge. This was a Macro Foundation's special episode on commodities. Strictly educational. No investment guidance. If you want to build macro understanding from first principles, explore the Essential Concepts series.